Judicial Watch is actually conducting an independent, thorough investigation of what went on. How did it happen? And what about the people who died? We have new documents, and they're better than documents. They're actual audio-visual recordings of the police investigation of the death of Ashley Bаббит. Included in the materials is a cell phone video that I think is new of the Ashley Babbitt shooting. We have audios of the witness interviews, including that of Lieutenant Byrd, who refused to talk to investigators, as best we can tell. And plus we have photos of Lieutenant Byrd, who was the shooter of Ashley Babbitt. There's a headshot photo, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So how did we get here? Well, Judicial Watch, despite everyone supposedly being interested in January 6th, Judicial Watch is actually conducting an independent, thorough investigation of what went on. How did it happen? And what about the people who died? We sued, for instance, for the autopsy results of Officer Sicknick, who everyone, the big media and the left lied about the circumstances of his death. And it looked like the medical examiner here in D.C. sat on the truth about his death, which is it wasn't a homicide. And that material was only released after we sued. And we also sued about records about the shooting death of Ashley Babbitt. Here we have a police officer involved shooting of an unarmed woman, 14-year veteran, who was no immediate threat to anyone, and silence, crickets. The Justice Department refused to do anything. The Capitol Police Department, who is run by the politicians on the Hill, namely Nancy Polosi, refused to do anything and gave him a free pass. And in fact, his name was kept secret from the American people for months until he voluntarily came forward to talk about this and try to defend his decision to shoot and kill Ashley Babbitt. And so Judicial Watch had a lawsuit against the D.C. Police Department and the Office of Medical Examiner for records. And you may recall a few weeks ago, we received records from the police investigation after months of litigation from the D.C. police. And they include witness interviews that make it pretty clear, because the officers were right near Lieutenant Byrd, that Ashley Babbitt was not armed. No one saw any any arms in her hands. So there was no mistake, oh, I thought she had a weapon. Oh no, she didn't have a weapon. Now they did find a knife in her pocket after she died, but that didn't have any impact on Lieutenant Byrd's decision to shoot her. She was coming through that window. You've all seen the video that's generally been out there, I'm sure, and presented no imminent threat, and Byrd wasn't there alone. In fact, there were police officers on the other side of the window who just could have pulled her away. Yet he shot and killed her. And as the record showed, there was no good reason. And to further confirm that, how reckless and dangerous was the decision by Lieutenant Byrd to shoot and kill Ashley Babbitt, you have to remember, as I said, there were not only other citizens on the other side of the glass doors, but also police officers, fellow police officers. And the new cell phone video that we have, it's heavily pixelated because the DC police they told us were trying to protect the identity of the police, or individuals who didn't volunteer to have their identities released by the government. So it's heavily pixelated, you'll see. And it shows, so imagine this is Ashley Babbitt coming through, and Byrd's back here, shoots her, right? And down here are a bunch of stairs, and the stairs, the police are coming up. There's a squad, heavily armed police officers, it looks like, coming up. And they hear the shot, and they all stop. And it's pretty clear that if the bullet had gone wrong, they could have hit, Lieutenant Byrd could have hit a police officer. So right here for you now is the new cell phone video showing those police officers who were placed at harm's way as a result of Lieutenant Byrd's reckless decision to shoot Ashley Babbitt. So here's the video. Watch it through its entirety, and you'll see why it's important.
We got you down. He said, there's one. Fuzzy Mac. You go on him. Watch the Fuzzy Mac guy. You guys, back off!
So there you have it. You see in that video why Lieutenant Byrd's decision to shoot Ashley Bаббит was so reckless and dangerous, because not only were there civilians there, but there were other law enforcement personnel who were, practically speaking, right in the line of fire. Now, my view is Lieutenant Byrd's shooting was treated quite differently than other police officer-involved shootings. And of course, I don't need to tell you that. You already know that. If it weren't a Trump supporter, if it weren't January 6th, if this weren't the Capitol Hill Police, which is the police agency right now run by Nancy Pelosi and her Democratic colleagues on the Hill, I'm convinced Lieutenant Byrd, in the least, would have faced a more serious criminal investigation, and also, again, in the least, an administrative sanction for recklessly shooting this unarmed individual. It was a bad shooting. And that video we have, which it took us forever and a day to get, further demonstrated. Also, we received, and it looked like it was a criminal investigation. One of the curious things, and I say this not knowing how it was resolved, because the Justice Department, which we're also suing for records about their decision related to the prosecution of Lieutenant Byrd, or non-prosecution in his case, hasn't given us the documents. But it's unclear from the documents we received whether there was a criminal prosecution recommended and rejected. So we don't know for sure whether someone wanted to prosecute him or not within the police department or within the Justice Department, or how that worked. But the pictures we have demonstrate that it looked to me that he was being seriously investigated, at least in part. Here, there's a picture of him. You can see, they got a straight-on headshot of Lieutenant Byrd. It's not quite a mugshot, but it's pretty darn close. And then they have, which I thought was even more interesting, pictures of his hands. So I defer to the forensic experts among you to tell us why, in your comments, why that's important. And then, of course, there are pictures of the gun. Many pictures of the gun were produced to us as well. And you'll see those pictures they're running through now. So, this is stuff exclusively obtained by Judicial Watch. So you have all of Congress investigating January 6th. We have that Star Chamber proceeding, that abusive investigation of Nancy Pelosi. And they're talking about how terrible January 6th was. Why is the Judicial Watch is releasing this information and not Congress? Or why isn't it being voluntarily disgorged in the ordinary course, as would ordinarily happen if it were another police officer involved shooting? It's politics, plain and simple. And some of the other photos we have include photos of the crime scene generally. And they're going to run a few photos as I'm talking here. You can kind of see the doorway where Babbitt went through. Well, she didn't get through because they shot her. Remember, you had that crowd behind that door. And I'm sure it was scary for everyone involved. If you're on the wrong side of that door, you see a crowd and you don't know what's going to happen. But we pay these police officers to keep their heads about them and not panic and not shoot. And that's the most charitable way of putting it. Prosecutors might put it a different way. And so you see from the photos how, the crazy situation there, at least with respect to that specific door area. And so we also have, I don't know if they'll be up in time for this video, but we have a few dozen of the audio witness statements, or the witness statements, audio recordings of the witness statements saying they didn't see any, that Babbitt was unarmed, and other information that show. And you can listen to it all. You can look at the, because we have the written materials as well from our last release of materials. And now we've got the audio witness statements, which are very interesting to hear because they provide, this material provides dramatic firsthand information about the shooting death of Ashley Bабbitt. And included in these audio witness statements is the audio statement of Lieutenant Byrd, who, as best we can tell, refused to cooperate, which is his right. But here is the 2-minute or so audio interview of Lieutenant Byrd. The voices sound weird because, and they sound weird in all of the witness statements, audio at least, is because the government somehow wanted to disguise the voices of people, even though in the case of Lieutenant Byrd, he's identified. So here is the audio interview. Here's the audio of the interview of Lieutenant Byrd.
Today is January 6th, 2020. It is approximately 1938 hours. I am Internal Affairs Division. We are located at 119 D Street, U.S. Capitol Police Headquarters. Present is the target of the criminal investigation for the Osterville shooting. Sir, would you please introduce yourself?
Lieutenant Michael Byrd, United States Capitol Police, House Chamber Section, Capitol Division, PIN number.
Thank you very much for that, sir. And if you would please introduce, also present, if you would please introduce yourself.
Agent MPD IAD.
And also present.
Special Agent United States Capitol Police Criminal Investigations Section.
Thank you very much. Now, before we get into the interview itself, I want to advise you of what's called the Garrity warnings. What Garrity says is that you are not required to give a statement to us today. That if you choose to do so or not choose to do so will have no bearing on your employment. That any statement you give is voluntary, but also please be aware that any statement that you give will be shared with the United States Attorney's Office. Any statement you give will be shared with the United States Attorney's Office. Okay. Do you understand the Garrity warning?
I do.
Okay. Are you willing to give us a statement today?
I would prefer to have a lawyer present.
Okay.
Under those, under the information that you just provided.
That is perfectly understandable. And I will not ask you to provide a statement today. I will ask you, though, that when you do secure counsel, you have my business card, my contact information on them. If you would have them reach out to me to arrange for you to provide a statement when appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, then. Well, then, with that said, we're going to end the recording at this time, unless there's anything else anyone would like to add. Okay. But I'm going to end the recording at this time. It is approximately 1941 hours.
So you see, Lieutenant Byrd didn't want to talk. He wanted to have his lawyer, and as best we can tell, no one ever interviewed him, at least in the police department of the Metropolitan Police Department, about his decision to shoot Ashley Babbitt. Of course, he talked to the media about it, but he didn't talk to law enforcement. Isn't that interesting? So this is, it shows you how important Judicial Watch's work is, that we're able to get this information in the face of a Congress that's focused on trying to destroy its political enemies using the pretext of January 6th. And of course, this is not our only lawsuit. As I said, we sued the Justice Department for its information on the shooting death of Ashley Babbitt, the only person killed via homicide that day. And we've sued the Congress for the videos. They're telling the court in our case against them for the videos, 14,000 hours of videos from that day. Not 1 second of the January 6th videos that Congress has can be released to judicial watch under the open records law. In fact, they're saying they're not even public records. And if they were, they're not important enough to release. The public interest doesn't outweigh their interest in confidentiality. Well, which is it? The worst day in American history that the public has an interest in figuring out how it happened? Or some just regular congressional day that doesn't require them to start releasing videos of what went on? You know where we stand on it. But Pelosi is the enemy, as I said before, of transparency on this. We have also litigation about the government's abuse of power in terms of targeting innocent Americans, trying to get the financial transaction records of everyone here in D.C. We have that lawsuit against the FBI. We got the military using January 6th as a pretext to start monitoring the social media posts, it looks like, in an inappropriate way, of our enlisted officials, our enlisted men and women, and who knows who else. Postal Service doing the same thing, monitoring social media posts. Who knew? We have a lawsuit on that. We have a lawsuit on Nancy Pelosi's conversation with General Milley about in their effort to undermine President Trump in the days shortly before the inauguration, trying to undermine the chain of command. Lawsuit after lawsuit. This is the real heavy lifting that's necessary on January 6th. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.